Sooner rather than later, a transformed type of rabies known as distraught canine illness spreads through the world, rapidly hopping from creatures to people. It just requires 90 seconds for a chomped individual to go raging, so soon north of 7 billion people are either dead or tainted. The ones that become zombies have an extremely high protection from torment and experience the ill effects of hyperviolence, and that implies they're anxious to kill. The world turns into a dystopian no man's land and savage zombie crowds become the standard. In an underground atomic base, the military has accumulated every one of the solid survivors they could find. The warriors have likewise collaborated with researchers from the communities for infectious prevention and counteraction to run a few examinations and track down a fix. Anyway, to do as such, they first need to find patient zero since their blood holds the response. They keep a lot of zombies secured in confines and consistently cross-examine them to figure out where everything began. Morgan is a regular citizen who was nibbled and contaminated, but he didn't change. It appears to be his blood is safe against the infection, yet they haven't had the option to make an immunization with it. On account of that nibble, Morgan is equipped for understanding and speaking with zombies. So he's joined Dr. Gina's group to assist with the exploration. The troopers get a furious zombie for cross-examination, tying down him to a seat inside a glass cell. The interaction begins by playing some music, which is agonizing for zombies. The contaminated person wriggles in torment on the seat as he attempts to break the ties without much of any result. When the zombie has sufficiently experienced, Morgan switches off the music and starts communicating in the snarling language to speak with the person while sending notes to Gina through a tablet. In the wake of nicknaming the person Joe, Morgan discovers that he's from Minnesota and is one of the initial not many individuals who got tainted. Attempting to interface with Joe to make him say more, Morgan concedes that occasionally he encounters extraordinary inclinations as well and starts discussing what's left of the world, saying he detests it here however much the zombies do. At that point Colonel Knox utilizes a mouthpiece to interfere with the cross-examination, which sends Joe into another furious fit. Disappointed, Morgan passes on the glass cell to give Joe time to quiet down, but Knox considers this hold-on to be an exercise in futility and urges Morgan to proceed with the cross-examination. In the cell, Joe is getting more insane constantly, which bothers Knox such a lot of that he winds up shooting him in dissatisfaction. Gina and Morgan promptly get enraged in light of the fact that Joe might have given more insights, and Gina takes steps to have Knox eliminated from his order assuming he mishandles his clout in her lab at any point in the future. Morgan punches the cell, demonstrating he without a doubt has a few rough urges that he should keep contained consistently. A short time later Morgan conceals in the washroom and attempts to quiet down. Before long Gina tracks down him and offers her solace, so Morgan utilizes the opportunity to yell about the circumstance and the strain he's under. Gina likewise offers him some medication, however Morgan turns it down and concedes he's been having bad dreams about his better half, who was chomped as well. The two of them concede they miss the straightforward life and wind up doing the filthy in the washroom. Minutes after the fact, Knox sees them leave the washroom and derides Gina for her bond with Morgan, so Gina blames him for being envious and says Knox couldn't have ever an opportunity with her. In the meantime Morgan goes to the underground cells and comes by a quite certain cell at the back. It just so happens, the zombie there is his significant other Janet, who was nibbled that very day as him. Morgan gives him an infusion with a serum in view of his blood, which doesn't fix her however basically dials back the contamination and keeps her clear. At first Janet smacks it away. Yet, after Morgan implores her to participate, she says that she actually recalls the music and gets the infusion. The following day, the warriors bring to the phone a zombie nicknamed Pete. At the point when they're going to attach him to the seat, he battles against the ties until he breaks free and quickly goes after the troopers. As the men battle to hold him down, Dr. Bike races into the cell to help, just for his arm to get chomped simultaneously. The group quickly take Bike to the clinical room, and Bike continues to ask them not to allow him to turn. They infuse him with the serum and Gina removes Bike's arm just before the 90 seconds run off. At first it appears to be he's okay and everybody celebrates, except unexpectedly Bike goes into shock and the gathering needs to rush to secure him before he changes. They aren't quickly enough and Bike sits up snarling, so Knox destroys him and says that is what Bike needed when the others fly off the handle. Morgan and Gina must choose the option to acknowledge he's right. Later while the troopers wash the cell, Knox becomes inebriated in the restroom. Gina has a breakdown in private, however Morgan tracks down her and solaces her through it. Then they visit the commemoration of Bike's child, leaving a little cupcake for his birthday. The next day, they take a stab at questioning Pete once more. Morgan is irate over the deficiency of Bike and continues to utilize the music to torment Pete for longer than expected, turning it on and off multiple times just to meddle with him. At the point when the inquiry's at last beginning, Peter shares he's from Minnesota and that he was tainted in October, yet he will not say more. Getting angrier, Morgan snaps and focuses his weapon at Pete, who actually doesn't address the inquiry and simply says make it happen. Baffled, Morgan leaves the cell. Later Gina and Morgan meet with General Pierce and make sense of that both Joe and Pete were contaminated in Minnesota by an early gathering. Gina needs to grow the inquiry into Minnesota since the possibilities of Patient Zero being there appear to be high. Knox promptly whines about the thought, saying it would just goal them to lose more troopers. Anyway, Gina continues onward, bringing up that the zombies have developed into a more shrewd and perilous variety, showing their essential assaults. Morgan additionally advises them that zombies can't lie. In the end, Broad Pierce approves a pursuit in Minnesota. After the gathering, Morgan presents to Janet another infusion. As they visit, Janet acknowledges Morgan as having blended sentiments about her and Gina, however Morgan swears that Janet is his beginning and end. Janet goes ballistic as she requests to be delivered, saying she would prefer to be free outside than protected in a hellhole. She additionally makes reference to the amount she shares a few human encounters like crying, so Morgan grasps her hand and tells her not to lose trust on the grounds that the infusions will help. Meanwhile, Morgan keeps on having flashbacks of his previous lifestyle with Janet. He continued to demand he needed a youngster, yet Janet needed to hold on to View as the right proxy. The couple was still extremely glad and even had their own code to show their affection. Later Gina takes another blood test from Morgan while yelling about the reality they can't sort out why just he is invulnerable. She's given a couple of arrangements as shot rodents, however nothing has worked up until this point and the rodents continue to kill one another. Morgan's safe blood can decrease the viral levels in the body, dial back disease, and quiet the hostility, yet the impact just goes on for 5 minutes. They're a long way from getting an immunization yet, so Gina brings up Janet's recuperation isn't insured and Morgan lashes out. At that point Gina decides to admit her affection for him, but Morgan simply leaves the room. That evening, Morgan longs for the evening of the episode. He and Janet had been passing through the city and when they halted at the traffic signals, 2 zombies hopped on their vehicle and broke their windows. Morgan drove forward until the zombies fell, however when the vehicle halted much more zombies bounced on the vehicle and arrived at through the windows, gnawing the 2 of them. In the present, Morgan awakens from the bad dream with a shout. In a little while, Gina finds that she's pregnant with Morgan's kid. She can't resist the urge to have a breakdown since she has no expectations that Morgan will return her sentiments. In the meantime, Knox and his men bring the fallen troopers from the pursuit mission to be incinerated. Subsequent to offering their appreciation, the troopers prepare to move the bodies, just for a dead man to out of nowhere awaken and assault. It turns out he's a non-military personnel zombie who dressed as a fighter to invade the base. As the animal beginnings killing the surgeons and the troopers individually decisively, Knox sneaks around to get a firearm, trusting that the right second will strike. The alert moans all through the labs and soon more fighters race to the crematorium, where Knox is looking for the foe that crawled under a rock. A recently changed colleague hops on him, so Knox rapidly shoots him before he continues to move. At that point, the penetrated zombie leaps out and attempts to go after him, yet when he's going to nibble Knox, Morgan comes in to pull the animal back. The warriors need to shoot him, but Morgan requests that they leave him alive for cross-examination. Then Knox focuses his firearm at the contaminated, who shocks them by immediately giving up and requesting to address Morgan. The zombie is taken to the glass cell and the music is turned on, but the person isn't annoyed. As a matter of fact, he simply stays there and takes out a cigarette to smoke. If not for his different shaded eyes, no one would have the option to tell he isn't human. The fighters track down a grounds ID on him, so Morgan epithets him the teacher. The cross-examination starts, yet the teacher isn't scared and replies with ambiguous way of thinking. He concedes he's been searching for Morgan, who clearly is extremely well known in the zombie local area. At the point when Morgan asks him for what good reason the music doesn't influence him, the teacher makes sense of that every zombie is novel very much like people, directing out that Morgan's capacity toward converse with zombies is his own kind of contamination uniqueness. This insults Morgan, who demands he isn't a zombie. The teacher additionally says that the zombies are an additional developed animal types than people who obliterate at whatever point they feel like it as well. Then he shares how he was contaminated. That day he was giving a talk at the college. He continued to get calls from his significant other, so he went to the hallway to take it. At the point when his significant other educated him concerning the bedlam assuming control over the city, the teacher heard a clamor in the study hall and turned around to find a swarm of zombies breaking in and going after everybody. The teacher attempted to take off, Yet soon the zombies were hurrying through the hallways and tainted understudies bounced on him, tearing into him. His body changed, however his brain was still adequately clear to get back. Notwithstanding, when he saw his significant other and his little girl, the infection set off his inward fury and constrained him to eat them both. Morgan is disturbed by the story and calls him out for his absence of control. Yet, the teacher essentially rehashes that zombies have transcended the constraints of humankind. He doesn't believe there's such an incredible concept as a patient zero and overlooks the inquiries to yell against the public authority and the framework. This makes Morgan at long last snap and punch him prior to leaving the cell. In the wake of bringing a second to quiet down, Morgan gets back to the phone and acknowledges a cigarette, professing to be cordial. The teacher prods him by getting some information about Janet and says she needn't bother with a fix since zombies are really the answer for human disease. As the philosophical meandering aimlessly proceeds, Morgan understands that the teacher is making him squander life deliberately. Getting dubious, he utilizes a gadget to check the zombie, and when he doesn't find anything, he hurries to the cells. He tracks down Pete and shares his hypothesis. Pete got caught deliberately as a feature of an arrangement. At the point when Pete acknowledges Morgan will hurt him to make him talk, he attempts to self-erase and falls oblivious. Morgan utilizes the scanner once more and gets a sign, so he opens a scar on Pete's body and tracks down a secret tracker. His hypothesis ends up being valid. Pete let the warriors catch him deliberately so different zombies could find the area of the base, affirming they're becoming more brilliant and intending to assault. Morgan hurries to illuminate Penetrate regarding the approaching risk, so Penetrate orders a full lockdown of the base. Sadly, the zombies get inside before they can wrap up getting the passages, and soon a bloodbath follows as evacuees are gone after without leniency. An animal sneaks to the cell region and delivers every one of the detainees, making the military significantly greater. The officers take a stab at starting to shoot, yet their numbers aren't sufficient and the zombies focus on progressing while at the same time killing everybody. Before long the crowd hurries through the passages and the labs are likewise attacked, making everybody begin running in alarm as additional individuals wind up dead. Knox takes Gina through a protected getaway course and Puncture attempts to follow them as the zombies pursue them. In any case, Knox destroys Puncture, so the zombies stop to benefit from him, giving him an opportunity to escape with Gina in the lift. A stunned Gina affronts Knox's activities, yet Knox says it was an essential penance for endurance. Enraged, Gina takes his weapon and stops the lift. She needs to return to the lab to get her examples since her examination is their main expectation, yet Knox declines and attempts to stop her. In the battle, the weapon is unintentionally shot and kills Knox. While the bloodbath go on in each edge of the base, a researcher attempts to conceal in the rodent lab. In any case, a zombie views as her and rapidly goes after her, thumping down the enclosures all the while. Presently the tainted rodents are unhindered too. In the meantime, Morgan rushes to the cells to free Janet and take off together. Morgan gets a fire hatchet on the way and in the long run they catch Gina, who doesn't believe it's smart to free Janet considering the infusions were transitory. Nonetheless, Morgan won't leave without her. At that point, a zombie shows up behind them, however Gina quickly destroys her and afterward declares she'll recover her examples. Morgan and Janet follow her to the lab refrigerator and keeping in mind that Gina snatches what she really wants, another zombie goes after just to be killed by Morgan's hatchet right away. Simultaneously the teacher lets out an exceptionally noisy thunder and soon a few zombies act the hero him. Back to the threesome, they move into the vents, cautiously keeping away from a few risky wires simultaneously. As they slither away, Gina sees the exile region through the meshes and is frightened to find a total slaughter. Their weight makes the mesh fall and presently the zombies know where they are. The threesome attempts to continue to move and finds the way obstructed by a zombie rodent that jumps toward them to assault, yet Janet rapidly snatches it and kills it with her exposed hands. Then they find the zombies are beginning to slither through the vents as well. The gathering picks up the pace and Morgan needs to kick a zombie until the vent breaks, dropping the animal to the ground. Morgan nearly falls as well yet Gina salvages him in the nick of time. At long last arrive at the parking area, where the teacher is sitting tight for them. He makes sense of he came to the base to kill Morgan since his blood could keep the zombies from having a future. Calling him the zombies' rendition of a patient zero. Morgan and the teacher begin to battle and the ladies attempt to help, however the teacher effectively overwhelms them both. Involving each item in the room, the men proceed to battle and the teacher wrecks Morgan, yet Morgan rapidly recuperates and pushes the teacher back to spear him on a line. Morgan gets injured in the process too, and prior to biting the dust, the teacher thunders again to gather an immense swarm. The threesome begins running, yet when they arrive at the entryway, Janet declares she's remaining behind to dial the swarm back. Morgan declines. So Janet uncovers she can detect Gina is pregnant to divert him and locks the entryway. Subsequent to pausing for a minute to weep for his significant other, Morgan escapes with Gina through a crisis burrow that drops them in the forest. There are a ton of zombies around, yet Morgan is certain they'll make it. His bicycle is covered up neighboring, so several leaps on it and races through the woodland as the zombies start pursuing them somewhere far off. Try to buy in and turn on warnings so you can observe more recordings like this. Gratitude for watching.